you're not supposed to be able to just like really understand what's happening here until you have played that game and probably played it again and then come back a third time and you're really looking at it line by line and you're going, oh my gosh, they set up literally everything here. It's all there, man. They planned the whole thing.
It was absolutely brilliant.
None of this technobabble is just technobabble.
Right.
It all is very purposeful. It all has strong reference and foreshadowing and like a payoff later.
Yeah.
And it's also just a very exciting sequence. It is. No matter what it is you're doing in terms of storytelling, whether, of course, we're going to be talking about games today because that's what we do on this podcast. But whether you're writing a novel, whether you're making a film, whatever you're doing.
Whether you're telling bedtime stories to your children.
No matter what story you're telling, even if it's just like you're telling your buddies a story over some beers.
Or a joke.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, a joke is really important.
Yes, this is very important.
Your hook. The introductory sequence, in this case, as we're going to be calling it, is one of the most important parts to get right as a storyteller. It's also one of the hardest.
Oh, yes. But it's called a hook for a reason. If you get it right, if you set the hook, people will follow you wherever you lead them.
Yes.
Right? They are coming with you because you hooked them. And they just want to see, you could have the worst story ever, but if you got a good hook, your people are going to follow you.
They'll give you some grace.
They will.
For exposition and for slowing things down.
Yeah.
Because what this essentially does is give you the opportunity to make a promise to your audience. Right. That's essentially what your introductory sequence is. Right. This is a promise that you are making to your audience. Here's what you can expect. This is why it's interesting, and here's a tasty morsel of a mystery to make you go, ooh, I just gotta know. Yeah. I gotta know what happens.
Yep.
So I've been watching the comedy murder mystery series Monk. I don't know if you've ever watched Monk before.
I love that show.
Monk was really popular
maybe
from
90s.
the late 90s into the 2000s.
Yeah.
And it's actually astonishing to me.
Yeah.
Like, how consistently for how many years they made really, really fun and genuinely intriguing murder mysteries. I mean, there's pretty close to, I would say probably more than 100 shows in the whole thing.
Oh,
and like almost every single one of them like has this really interesting hook at the beginning. So I've been watching that and kind of studying how it is that they go about doing that. And then I wanted to apply some of those thoughts into how we evaluate these games that we've picked. So today we're going to talk about 10 of the greatest video game intro sequences or opening scenes in history.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to do a few honorable mentions at the beginning because there's way more than 10 that are very, very good.
Yeah.
Additionally to that, I swear there is one floating around somewhere here in my unconscious.
Yeah.
And I just can't seem to get it. So I feel like I'm missing something I want to talk about.
Yep.
And
let us know what it is.
Someone in the comments is going to probably say it.
Yeah.
And so like maybe we'll revisit this topic in the future and add a few more. But we are also excluding, for the purpose of this episode, any Final Fantasy game.
Indeed we are. And it's not because they aren't good. It's because
they're too good.
They're too good. And it's like, okay, number 1, FF something, and number 2, FF something. We had like 4 Final Fantasies on the list. Yes. And it's like, look, we got to give other games a chance.
We are going to do a whole episode dedicated to Final Fantasy intro sequences and why they're so great,
so good,
as its own episode. So you can look forward to that on another occasion. But we did not want to make half of this list Final Fantasy games. So we're doing no Final Fantasy games. Plus, we've talked about it quite a bit at length in other videos.
Of them. Yeah.
So anyway, we'll return to that later. Also, honorable mentions. Let's get some of these out of the way.
Okay.
We are about to begin a Metal Gear Solid 2 long form analysis.
Yeah.
So in order really to not spoil our own episode coming up in like a week or two, we're not going to do Metal Gear Solid 2, but I freaking love the intro to that game. I think it's phenomenal.
It's really good. I liked it a lot too.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 1 for that matter is also very, very good. Yeah. But Metal Gear Solid 2 was fantastic.
Yeah.
I actually spoiler alert, like just really, really, really loved that game. So
Me too.
look forward to that breakdown because
That game took me
I'm
back.
really looking forward to it. But I mean, there's also a lot of others that were like, we were debating whether we should include them or not. Back when Valve used to actually make video games, they were really good at this with Portal 2.
Yes.
And so we were talking about maybe including Portal 2, and that didn't quite make the cut. We talked about Persona 5 before we started.
5, yeah.
We talked
Great
about
intro, very exciting.
lots and lots of different ones. Earthbound was on the list.
Which is just a fun, feel-good, just a great intro.
Mass Effect 2 was there.
2.
There was a bunch of others.
Yeah, this was a strict competition. This was a very, very like
it was tough,
highly competitive
to get it down to the 10. But we wanted to do a list of 10, so this is our list of 10, and let's jump into it. But just know there's lots of great intros out there. But I guess before we jump into the list, real quick, I wanted to talk about the essential elements that for me are what are like the ingredients, the recipe for creating, at least in what is in my mind, the ideal introductory sequence. So here are the notes that I took for that. A great opening sequence makes promises to the player. A compelling mystery with high stakes for the main character is like number one thing. It's got to have that. It needs exciting action that gives the player an idea or foreshadows what the gameplay is going to be like. So we're talking strictly about games here, right? So you need to work in some of the gameplay elements in a way that gives a promise for what the player can expect is coming. One game on this list does this extremely, extremely well, and I'll go more into that at that time. It needs to set the tone that promises what kind of themes and emotions the game wants to create in the player.
Yeah.
And also really hammer home, especially in a narrative-driven game, right? So we're talking mostly about narrative-driven games here. So Super Mario and Banjo-Kazooie and things like that are not making the list, even though they might have, good first levels or introductory sequences.
Yeah.
But in terms of narrative-focused games, what are you trying to say with your story?
Right.
And how are you making a promise that you're going to like say something that I should pay attention to about that, and also set a tone that again pulls me in, intrigues me, makes me ask questions about this world. So that's another big one for me. And the music must slay. The music has to be probably some of your best music in your whole game.
Has to be right there at the beginning.
You got some bookends in terms of music goes. You need like your best music for the beginning and your best music for your final boss and ending and credits scenes. Like those need to be like a bookend musically of some of like your best music. So I look for that as well. And then my final note here is it needs to be quick and punchy and establish all this stuff I'm talking about in less than 15 minutes, ideally.
Yeah.
I want to be playing the game as quickly as possible, not reading overly wordy dialogue and watching cutscenes for an hour. I want to be playing the game within 15 minutes. So that's really important to me. So those are my criteria and part of the reason why certain things may have made or not made this list ultimately. So,
all right.
Do you have any thoughts on that stuff, what you look for before we get started?
No, other than it's got to be dope. If it's a dope intro,
it's got to be dope.
I'm with you, right? And that can take many different forms. Like I mentioned Earthbound before. I love the intro to Earthbound. It's not this chaotic, exciting thrill ride. It's just very, very intriguing and wraps up into just this wonderful moment at the top of the mountain. So,
Okay. So first game on the list today is Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
I'm going to, for 1 second, this is obviously a very, very popular game. It was like a huge seller. I don't know, more than 10 million, maybe more than 20 million units. It's going to be turned in, or at least was supposed to be turned into a movie or some kind of TV series or something.
Huh.
They've got a sequel to the game coming out. But there is definitely, I feel like, a sense online that I've run into of people, something gets popular, therefore it's overrated.
Yes,
and that sort of thing.
Of course, yeah.
I went back through the intro sequence to this in preparation for this episode, and it is astounding to me right from the beginning. I mean, the first freaking words off the page are leading you into the game's core message and theme.
Nice.
I mean, it's just like perfectly set up. So not only is this like an exciting battle sequence where you're playing the game really quickly and it's chaotic and it's like, holy crap, this
crazy.
is nuts. Like,
and fire.
Technologically, it's extremely impressive.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
But thematically, it is so cool the way that this sets up where this story is going.
Mm-hmm.
So the first line from our main character: the Mongol Empire is invading our home. They are brutal, relentless, unstoppable. We are 80 samurai against an army, fighting to slow the invasion. Today, I die for my people. And so he says to his uncle. So his uncle is like the lord of this particular region or whatever, right? There must be thousands of them, he says to him. And his uncle says, we will face death and defend our home. So essentially, these samurai are prepared to die.
Yeah.
They know they're going to. They came here with the expectation that we're going to die, but that we will just slow or just like maybe create a little hurdle for the beginning of this invasion. They're giving their lives for that.
Yeah.
This is important. The uncle says tradition, courage, honor. They are what make us. We are the warriors of Tsushima. We are samurai. And then he turns to one of his other samurai lords. Lord Adachi, go break their spirits.
Nice.
So there has been
That's
this
great.
romanticizing of just samurai in general. Right. You know, samurai movies and games like this that maybe don't paint like the most realistic picture of like the samurai when they were in power and like how kind of oppressive and like messed up that those dudes were. Yeah. But whatever. I'm ignoring that because the important thing in terms of the romanticized idea of what a samurai is in our popular media is that they are obsessed with honor and doing things in an honorable way and following these traditions.
Right.
And so what happens is this Lord Adachi goes down and he stands in front of the Mongol army and he says to them, outsiders, send your finest warrior to face me. And the Mongol general steps right up to him. And he says to him, I am Harunobu Adachi, descendant of the legendary Yoshinobu Adachi. He starts talking about his ancestors, his history, his legacy, this rich legacy of a warrior culture here. And the Mongol general just throws a bunch of alcohol on him, takes a torch and lights him on fire.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that was crazy.
The reason why this is so great is because this is exactly what this game is trying to deconstruct for our main character. This romanticized tradition of the samurai, which his uncle holds as the most important thing in the world. We would die rather than give up that honor.
Right.
We will die as in basically the pursuit of ensuring we retain that honor, even if it means this invasion is successful and they take over our whole country and pillage and rape all of our people and take everything from us. That can never be something we cross the line on. Right. Honor and our traditions, the way that we go about doing things, that's more important than survival is. And it's demonstrated so well in just that little thing. Samurai walks up there, I am this guy, and here's my lineage, and here's why I'm super important, just lights the dude on fire. Does not give a fetch about their honor or their traditions or anything.
That kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
When the guy's flipping the swords around and he's just like, you're 200 years too late, buddy.
Yeah.
And he just shoots him. Yeah.
And essentially what the main character of the story is going to have to learn is that if he has to wrestle with this, what matters more here? Tradition, the past, upholding a certain like set of rules and dogmas, for lack of a better word, or making sure that we adapt as a people.
to survive,
right. And to like leave a legacy for our future. Right. It's kind of this like clash between like the past and the future, like what's actually more important. Here.
Right.
And it sets up perfectly like where his relationship with his uncle is going to go. And it's astounding how well they set that up and how basically how powerless and how like outdated their fighting tactics are in comparison to this new enemy that has come up to them. And I love the line from the villain here, Kutan. He basically has the uncle like captive, and he says to him, "I am Khotan, cousin of Kublai, grandson of Genghis.
Yeah,
brother, you are a warrior. I can see that. You trained your whole life for this, and you've won battles that lesser men have called unwinnable. Yes, but while you were sharpening your sword, I learned. I know your language, your traditions, your beliefs, which villages to tame and which to burn. So I ask you again, samurai, do you surrender?" So this is not an enemy that they can take down or that they can face at all through their traditional, honorable methods of fighting.
Right.
They are doomed to lose to this enemy. This enemy knows them, knows all their weaknesses, knows all their traditions. And that's like, what is it? Sun Tzu's like first thing, like know your enemy, right?
Know your enemy, yeah.
This dude knows you, the in and out. So you have to adapt. You have to change in order to be successful here.
Right, you have to surprise him with something.
There is no better way to set that up than with the way that this does it. It's phenomenal. It's so good.
Very cool.
So Ghost of Tsushima, I think, is well deserving of like one of the best intros I've ever seen in a game. It's
I just remember being blown away throughout that entire intro. Just like, I can't believe this game is real. And it might have also had something to do with the Akira Kurosawa mode that you can Akira Kurosawa. Gosh, I can't speak right now. The mode of like black and white with the film grain and the audio effects, and you can play that game as though it's basically a movie. And then it really felt like I was just watching something like an old samurai movie as I was playing the game. It was really fun, really cool, and unbelievably exciting.
Yeah.
So cool.
Really
if you
great
haven't
style.
played the intro to Ghost of Tsushima, do yourself a favor and play it. It's really, really fun stuff.
Yeah, great.
All right.
What's our next one?
Next one is a game called Bioshock.
Oh my goodness.
Now, Bioshock
this one's really good.
has a crazy good intro. It actually just, during our podcast for Bioshock, it was blowing me away just throughout the entire podcast. And I was like, the intro keeps getting better as I play the game more and more. And it was a great intro to begin with.
Yeah.
But you're, like you mentioned before, it says a lot about what this game is right from the very beginning.
Yep.
Right? You've got a guy on an airplane, and he's like, "Mommy always said I'd make something of myself. She was right." And then, boom, like the plane crashes, and this is all, it's all intro. It's just, these aren't spoilers, right? This is how the game starts out. You're in the middle of this plane wreck in the Atlantic Ocean, I think. And there's an island and a lighthouse here?
Yeah,
like, this is
a
wild.
Lighthouse, like right next to where you landed.
And then you're hearing the voice as you get in there of just like, "Welcome to the world of tomorrow." And I can't remember the specific
it feels very much
wording.
almost like a Disney attraction.
It does. It feels like a
but
ride.
Like it's so unsettling because of that tone. Yeah.
And also, is our character the kind of person that deserves that deserves anything good here, right? And there's kind of like a duality that plays out throughout the game where it's like, this plane just crashed. We kind of saw this flashback before. This dude's like smoking on an airplane, which was allowable back in the 50s. Okay. But pretty clear hint as to exactly what happened there. But also you get the themes and the symbolism of basically like, an angel fallen from grace, right? Like mommy's little boy who has maybe made some different choices in life and has come falling down to earth from the heavens on a plane with wings, like wings, bird wings drawn onto the sides of it,
Yeah, there was a
and
symbol
then the descent downward
on the plane itself, like on the like painted on there, right? Like angelic wings.
It was like it was angelic kind of stuff, but then it crashes and burns in a lake of burning sulfur, right? So there's like some pretty clear like fallen angel vibes here, and then you descend down into the water into this world that is just it's so cool how they made this whole city underwater. But as you're going on that ride, one of the funnest parts is kind of going through the city and seeing in the distance like a whale kind of like swimming through the water.
This whole city.
And it's just like, this is insane. Who would build a city underwater like this? Massive, huge, sprawling city. And then of course the what are they called? Those a splicer.
Yeah,
a splicer shows up and is just like, hey, this is kind of cool. You just came from something horrific and you just discovered something that you thought was going to save you. And guess what? There's a lot more horror.
Dude's trying to kill you right away.
Right away. Just boom. And of course it's just got this turbulent, exciting sequence where you're technically playing the game. I think you could even die if you swim into the fire. So you've got to like kind of go around in the right way and it at least hurts you. I know that. And then you get up onto the lighthouse and you can kind of make your way on down. But unbelievably exciting without technically, I mean, you don't really kill anything for a while.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's interesting also, still also exciting. But the way that they're just presenting you just the world and the circumstance, right? These circumstances are things you've never even dreamed of before.
Yeah.
And here it is. And it's wild,
yeah.
right? It's just wild. It's such a fun ride. And it feels like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I think what I love so much about it too is you have this, what feels like a Disney attraction or a Disney ride of sorts as you're going down into this city that was built underwater, right? And you have the philosophy, the ideology of the man whose dream it was to build this underwater
He kind of
city.
Introduces it to you as you're going.
It's all being like broadcast audibly as you're like going down here, right? And so you're hearing this idea about an idyllic utopia.
Yeah. And it sure looks as you're entering it, it's like, wow, what a magical wonderland.
And then almost immediately, it's like, this is actually quite literally hell.
Welcome to hell. Welcome to hell.
And
fallen angel. Try to make your way back.
We have this idea of, the extremes in ideology, who all have their ideas of utopia, who think that they can plan for every contingency, who feel that they're right. They're so convinced that their way is the right way, that they are blinded to very specific, certain things that when those things go wrong, it all unravels. Yeah. And it sets that whole thing up just like so perfectly. It's
beautifully,
really good.
It's so much fun.
So the next one that I put down here is Eternal Darkness. Eternal Darkness it's a funny game for me because like, my memories of it were from like my teenage years. And so like
2002 maybe?
Yeah. And like you had a little brother who got really, really into it and like really obsessed with it and played it like a ton.
Yeah.
And so like my memories of it were sort of associated more with like, you kind of have that thought sometimes where you haven't revisited something in a while and you're like, the premise to this sounds exactly like what would be dope to a 13 or 14-year-old.
Right,
Is that still going to be cool to me now?
Upon further review.
Right? Like, I had very specific questions about that too with, say, like Metal Gear Solid, although, spoiler alert, I still really love that. But anyways, no. Upon revisiting it, there's actually like a lot of depth here that would have went way over my head as a kid.
Yeah.
And so the intro to this game is actually really, really great. The first word said in the game is flesh.
Oh, wow.
I can't tell you, like, in particular for this game, if you haven't played it, like, why that hits. Like, just the word flesh.
Yeah.
It's flesh, period. Like, just the word flesh. And the shot is... it's just the book, right? The Eternal Darkness, like book, which is a book of skin and
book
flesh.
Of flesh.
Like the cover of it is like human flesh.
Yeah.
So it's just that one word, flesh, and it kind of hangs on that for a second. Bone, bound together with the oddest magical incantation. This wretched book is where it all began so long ago, before time, before humanity. I am Dr. Edward Roivas. I am a clinical psychologist. I am also dead.
That's freaking
that's gripping.
Great. That's a gripping intro.
It is. Yes. This is exactly the kind of thing that they teach you in creative writing classes if you're wanting to write a novel. That's the line you want to lead off on in your book. When you when you start your first paragraph, your first line, your first sentence. You want to end with something that makes you go, oh, wow, like what happened? That immediately creates a mystery, right? It's so great. I am Dr. Edward Roivas. I am a clinical psychologist. I am also dead. This is not my story, nor even the story of the Roivas family. It is the story of humanity. And again, if you've played Eternal Darkness, like it really is, right?
Yeah.
So we open up after that on this nightmare where Alex, who is one of the main characters, I'd say probably the main character of the game, she's being attacked by these monsters, and she's got a gun and you're kind of shooting them. And, you know, even if you end
There's way too many of them, right?
Killing them, you'll eventually run out of ammo, and they just kind of keep spawning and coming after you. So it's kind of one of those things you're meant to lose. It's a nightmare, right? She sees her grandfather there, like his spirit kind of comes to visit her. Edward Roivas, this guy who just said, I am dead. So this is his granddaughter who's going to be the main character of the game. And she's woken up by a phone call. And she picks it up, and it's essentially police calling her because her grandfather has been murdered.
Yeah.
And they want her to come and see if she can identify the body. So she travels to Rhode Island to their like family's estate, right? She's the last surviving member of this family.
He's still there, right? On the chair.
Her grandfather?
His body?
No. So the police officer basically goes through this long sort of like setup where he's trying to like make it gentle.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, I wish we could meet under better circumstances. Like, I'm warning you, this is not a pleasant sight. Like, he's just kind of like trying to really like set the right tone for this, right? And I still wasn't expecting how freaking gruesome this murder is. It was unbelievably gruesome. Like, the head was cut off.
Yes, I remember that.
Completely. And the body, there's just blood everywhere. It's like messed up. And so she's like, gosh, why did you like bring me here to see this? Couldn't you just check dental records or something? Look, there's no head. Like, we wanted to make sure that you could identify, and she's able to identify because of the ring that is on the hand, which made me think, why didn't you just run fingerprints? Maybe there's an answer to that. Maybe there's an answer to that I'm not remembering. Because if the hand is there and the ring is on it, you could have just run fingerprints on the guy.
Or maybe just show a photo.
Perhaps there's something I'm forgetting that explains why the fingerprints wouldn't have worked. But in any case, they couldn't identify the body. They brought her there to try to identify it. And so she then is set to try to find out what happened because the police are incompetent. They're not solving anything. And she's like, I'm going to find out what happened to my grandfather. She comes across this book and learns about this darkness that has basically threatened humanity many times over thousands of years. And now she's the next in line to kind of like hold it at bay. It's such a good game, dude. Like, it's so good. But the intro to it, I thought, was really quite fantastic. I just loved that opening line of flesh, bone, bound together by the oddest magical incantation.
There was some of the developers from it were going to make something of a sequel to it, but I think that's fallen through.
Yeah, there was a spiritual successor that they tried to kickstart, and it wasn't ever.
It didn't ever come to fruition.
Yeah, didn't happen.
That's unfortunate because there were some really fun ideas in that game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And a really cool game.
We are going to cover Eternal Darkness at some
I would
point
love
in
to.
this podcast. Yeah, anyway. Next one.
All right. The next one we have is Kingdom Hearts.
The
very first one.
It's no secret that I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan. I like Kingdom Hearts 1 a lot.
Kingdom Hearts 1's very
good. And in particular, we've actually done an episode way in the past where we talked about how great like the tutorialization, like the way they tutorialize the player is in Kingdom Hearts 1. I think it's actually outstanding. It's really good.
So at the very beginning, of course, you've got Sora kind of alone in this stained glass kind of room, and you've got some of the Disney scenes set up, and you're being tutorialized, as you're going along. But it's really good. The part of the intro that I want to focus on is more kind of past that when you're at Destiny Island, and then you see Selphie. There's
the final FF.
Yeah, first there's Selphie and Tidus, and you're there with Waka. I think Waka, Selphie, and Tidus. And you're kind of learning from them, and then of course you move on to Kairi and Riku. But the most intriguing part of the entire intro is, of course, where everything's being blown to bits, right? Because it's kind of fun to like race Riku and do the stuff at the beginning of the game, but and it's good tutorial stuff. But the real hook is when everything just gets blown to smithereens, just completely destroyed. It's all gone, and you see basically the monster from the end of Fantasia
yes,
up on the mountain.
Yes.
You see something like that's just basically sucking everything up into just the abyss of nothingness. And of course, Sora gets sucked into the black hole as well. But the whole scene, the way that Destiny Island kind of starts out, where it's serene, it's calm, it's peaceful. Kairi, Sora, Riku, they're all like best friends and talking about the future and what they want to do. And you just kind of go to bed and it's like, oh, that was a fun day. Like, it's a fun beginning to a game. But then you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a storm and the waters are raging and something crazy is happening. And you have to run out and go find out what it is. And it's so unexpected because at the very least, this is kind of a Disney-ish game, right? Because you saw the Snow White mural at the beginning. You saw, some of you're familiar with maybe the general concept of the game. From when you just purchased it. Like, oh, this has something to do with the Disney stuff. But as soon as you step out onto the island and you see that you're in a world that is being broken and your friends are disappearing before you, Kairi just kind of, is blasted away by basically that Ansem guy who is poetically verbose. And then Riku is just like, let's do it. Let's join the darkness. It's like, this isn't actually what I had in mind for a Disney collaboration with any video game company. It was a breath of fresh air. It was very unique, very interesting.
Yeah.
And of course, the game's concepts being kind of Final Fantasy-ish along with Disney. This was a good way to kind of introduce that. And then to give you a beautiful, serene world that is doomed to break and that you will spend the rest of the game trying to recover. Yeah. Because it's like, no, that was valuable. That was cool. That was a paradise in more ways than one. How do we get back there? Yeah. Like, that was so much. It's just the place that people just want to be, just to live. And they sold that very well. So I love the intro to Kingdom Hearts 1. It's absolutely, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite aspects of it is it knows kind of its target market. Which I think would have been me around the time it came out. So you're coming into like that teenage years or maybe a little bit younger than that, preteen, a little bit. The rivalry between
with Riku
is like so good.
You can feel it.
Like, because it almost pushes you to kind of like get good at certain elements of the combat and things early, because he's kind of tough to fight.
He is.
But like, he keeps score, which is what I love about this.
Yeah.
Like, you're keeping score about how many times he wins and you win. And if you want to make sure that you come out on top
more, like best out of 50.
Then you have to fight him a bunch of times and really like learn how to fight well. And so, and the same thing with the racing and a bunch of there's stuff that you can repeat. And so it lets you sort of like get pretty skilled at the game in the pursuit of like making sure you have that one up on Riku. And I thought that was brilliant because that's very relatable to that age group, right?
Yeah.
Even for your friends, like, people you're close to, you still have that a little bit of that rivalry and you're pushing each other a little bit, right? And so I thought that was brilliant. I think that speaks to kids of that age and is another great way of tutorializing, making sure that they're learning the skills that they need to learn to be successful in the game. So
yeah, super fun. I wish I played this game when I was that age. Yeah. Maybe when it first came out. You know, it might have. It still means a lot to me even today, but it was probably a lot more powerful even, especially back then.
Especially because they're both obviously competing for this girl.
Yes.
This girl's affection.
And not only that, but there is something akin to just the paradise that you want to try to regain as you get older. Like you mentioned, kind of early teens, right? Mm-hmm. It's the breaking of friendships and of the paradise and of home and of innocence. Yeah. The destroying of that is something that just naturally happens as you begin to enter your teenage years anyways. And so for the game to kind of mirror that a little bit, but do so in a way that still combines the fun of the youth with, maybe the uncertainty of the future. Yeah. Kingdom Hearts does that in such a perfect way, especially for somebody who is actually experiencing that in their actual life.
Like in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't know if any of that was like on their minds, but like whether it's lightning a bottle, whether it happened by accident, whether that was intentional, I don't know. But it works. It just works. It just really works.
Very well.
I love the intro of Kingdom Hearts. So I've talked at length about how obsessed I was with Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
And how that kind of like got me back into gaming in a really serious way.
Yeah.
when Majora's Mask was announced, I think you guys had Nintendo Power, a subscription to Nintendo Power at the time. And so Landon was showing me the next Zelda game. And I thought it was so dumb that the moon had a face.
Yes, of course. Not just any face, like a crazy face.
It looks like it just felt I don't know how to describe how it made me feel, but it was like that just seems silly or weird. Why does it have a face? I don't know why I was hung up on that particular issue. Because I was, I don't know, probably 13 and had like, my brain was not developed and I had no idea to think, okay, what are the artists like trying to make with this?
No, that's not how kids think.
Right? It wasn't until I actually played it. And again, you just kind of like feel it, particularly in the intro, like, okay, this is going somewhere pretty cool. Majora's Mask's intro is like, I think the best of any Zelda game, in my opinion.
It's the most intriguing for sure.
It's amazing because this is probably the most unique game in the series, at least in the 3D Zelda games. I would say maybe like Link's Awakening.
Yeah, it was pretty
probably has that similar sort of like way outside the box of what you typically expect from like Zelda stories and stuff like that. This was just so out there and so different that it has now become easily my favorite one for a lot of reasons. But this intro gives you just so much to chew on. So it leads off, and this is especially great for someone who had played Ocarina of Time as many times as I had and just knew it inside and out. Like I had replayed it.
Right.
So I was just obsessed with it. And so this is the same character, the same boy from that game. In the land of Hyrule, there echoes a legend held dearly by the royal family that tells of a boy who, after battling evil and saving Hyrule, crept away from the land that had made him a legend. Done with battles he once waged across time, he embarked on a journey, a secret and personal journey.
Yes, that's important.
Yes, a journey in search of a beloved and invaluable friend, a friend with whom he parted ways when he finally fulfilled his heroic destiny and took his place among legends. And you just hear the sound of a fairy flying. There's that little like tinkly kind of sound. So to me, that's always meant he's looking for Navi, who left at the ending of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, you see the fairy kind of fly up after you put the Master Sword back. It kind of flies up towards the window.
The window there at the end. So he's on a search for his friend. He's in these dark woods. There's a lot of mist. And the music is just really mysterious and intriguing. Again, music's really important to me in introductory sequences. So he's on Epona. He's just sort of like slowly trudging through these woods. We don't know where this is. This was not a location in Ocarina of Time. So
I had assumed he was in the Lost Woods, just
or something like that.
Speaking.
Yeah, sure. That actually could be it. But he's making his way out of Hyrule. Essentially, he's leaving Hyrule. And I feel like the cinematography here, the music, it's just all so good at setting this tone that I think it's just another step up. I mean, the cinematography, it was obviously very good even in the first game. But here it's just like they've obviously learned, or they've like made the next step as developers, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
I love how like the two fairies, you have the light and the dark one.
Yeah, Tell and
Tattle.
Yeah,
and Tail, yeah. And it's Tattletale, I think, is the idea there. So Tattle is the girl, she's the older one. Tail is the younger one, the purple colored one, Tattletale. And so they kind of surprise him. He falls off the horse. And I love how you just see the mask, the Majora's Mask appear first.
And then the body.
And then Skull Kid's body comes in behind that.
Well, it's really good because it's the mask, in a way, the mask is acting on its own.
Yes, and it's in charge.
So you see it, and then, also there's a little body here, but that's not as important.
It's leading the body. It's possessing the body, right? Yes. So cool. And I also love the laugh.
Yes,
the
he's playing the ocarina.
It's almost...
I love it.
Almost Kefka-esque.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
In a way. I mean, that iconic sort of Kefka laugh soundbite. Skull Kids is not quite as iconic as that, but it's like in that sort of like, tier. It's like up there. You hear that laugh, you know what that is.
And he keeps going. You don't have to push A to go through the dialogue. You can just stay on that screen and he'll play a different random note.
Yes.
And then laugh and then play a new note and then laugh. For hours, if you want. Yeah.
While the fairies argue about who gets the next chance to play, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, Link wakes up. Skull Kid takes the horse and he's chasing after him. He's like holding onto his legs as he like gets pulled into the distance. I love the flips. So I don't know if I said this when we talked about Ocarina of Time a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things about that game, when I really got hooked as like a boy to this, was when the Z targeting, when you can do backflips.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the sickest thing I've ever seen ever. Holy fetch, that's so cool.
He just did a standing backflip.
I backflipped like freaking everywhere. I was just constantly doing backflips. It was so sick. So in this game, when they added the feature where, you know, you run to a ledge and he just kind of auto jumps.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a jump button, but he'll just kind of auto jump to the next ledge. So you on the first cycle, he'll just do a normal jump. The second cycle, he does like kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not a flip, but it's kind of like a cartwheel almost.
Okay.
And then on the third one, a front flip. And then the cycle starts again. So each jump is a regular jump, kind of this cartwheel through the air, and then a front flip. And I saw that. I was just like, what? They added front flips and stuff? Just the flips. We're like so sick.
Oh gosh, as big fans of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff, the flips are important. It's important to pull off a nice flip.
It's so freaking dope.
Yeah, kids love that stuff.
It's so freaking dope. I was hooked right there. I was like, this is the sickest game ever. And then basically you have this very Alice in Wonderland-esque sort of fall into another world, because he kind of runs into this very basically dark pit, a bottomless pit, and he's teetering on the edge, and then he just falls down. And you see a bunch of like glowing colored images, ocarinas, the Majora's Mask itself. The Fierce Deity's mask is one of them. You have like the face of the what are they called? The Gorons.
Oh yeah.
And a face of like a Deku shrub and other things.
Yeah.
And the Zora face. So you see a bunch of those come up. He lands, and this shot is so cool, the way they spotlight Skull Kid there.
Yes, the spotlight,
And he's just like floating like on his side, just very relaxed, taunting you. It's like very menacing. They put him in a total like power position with the camera there, and Link is like, you know, like sitting down on the ground. He tries to stand up, but he's very much in that sort of like powerless position.
Right.
And he transforms him into a Deku shrub. But I love that they didn't just like, I don't know, cut away and come back and he's a Deku shrub.
They show like a nightmare.
Show like a morph.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It's this very abstract, symbolic way in which they do it, where it's like the frame rate. It's not just the frame rate. It's like the aperture of the camera is so that you get these long blurs, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
So it's very dreamlike.
Yeah,
and he's surrounded by Deku shrubs, and he's just like trying to run away. And then this giant one is like chasing after him, all just like he can't escape whatever this power is that's like overcoming him. He's transformed into the Deku shrub, right? And so you get some tastes of what that's going to be like with the little flowers, and you're like floating around.
Well, and you hear he does that scream, like the Link scream, as a Deku shrub.
Yeah,
and it sounds like
it's like that oscillating sort of like effect on it.
But you could tell they used his actual scream for it, and then they just made it sound like a Deku shrub. Totally. That was very, very fun.
And so, anyways, the incredibly high stakes, and then I love that Tattle gets left behind. And so she like basically forces her way into being partners with you. Get back at Skull Kid for leaving her behind. Really funny, like nice moment of levity there right after like some pretty dark stuff. But then one of my favorite parts too is right at the end of this sequence where you come to the mask salesman again from Ocarina of Time. And I love that they reused so many assets. I think one of my favorite things creatively about Majora's Mask was clearly they were asked, reuse the assets of Ocarina of Time, make us another game,
new assets,
and do it quickly.
Yes.
And let's bank on all this work we already did. Engine, assets, make another one. But they didn't, but it doesn't suffer from the kind of sequelitis that you generally tend to see with that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
They went so creative with it that they gave you certain characters again, but like really interesting twists that make you look at them completely differently. And that's how I feel about the masked salesman here. He's telling you about how important it is he gets this mask back that he lost, but he doesn't tell you anything he's withholding information.
And it's pretty clear, too.
Clear that he's not telling you everything. Yeah. And that gives him this very creepy, unsettling vibe.
Well, he's got that big smile on his face. Yeah.
And he does that thing where, like, you know, in anime where they're in one position and then they just immediately are in another position, immediately in another position. So there's just this unsettling, creepy nature to him. He's not telling you everything, and especially does not tell you, I need this mask within 3 days because it's very important that I leave for another place. And he doesn't tell you why. You have to go outside and look up at the sky and go, oh my gosh, this moon's going to collide with the world. That's what's happening in 3 days. It's phenomenal. It sets up so much mystery, high stakes for the character. He gets rid of your horse. I was like,
he just says, I got rid of it. I did you a favor. That thing
never listens anyways. Who needs a beast like that? I got rid of it for you, So it's fantastic. I love
how the mask salesman looks as though he's wearing a mask himself, right? His true intentions are very veiled behind that fake smile that he's got plastered on the front.
His face is a mask.
He is a mask. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So much fun.
It sets the tone for this game immediately. It's got that very like out there Alice in Wonderland kind of feel to it. You mentioned Dante's Inferno a little bit.
Yes. The beginning of wandering alone through a dark forest.
Yeah.
I actually could this is so fascinating to me that I could go through the entire intro here and give a pretty unique reading that I think people haven't seen or heard before, but that I think might actually be the reading of Majora's Mask.
I think we're going to do, as far as Zelda games go, this is at the high end of my list
want to do
of games I want to cover on the podcast.
Good, that'd be so much fun.
Anyway, Majora's Mask is friggin' amazing. We'll talk more about it in the future.
This next game, the very first time I saw anybody play this game, it was my younger brother, and he opened up Half-Life 2, and he just wanted to show me, like, hey, check out this game. It's crazy. Can't even believe it, right? And it absolutely is, by the way. Half-Life 2 has an, just completely off the rails. Like, the beginning, it kind of sets you up in this world where, you're kind of hearing a voice, you're seeing a face that's like, hey, we brought you back, you've got something to do. And that's not a good guy. The way he acts, the way he speaks, it's really, really off, right? And he's just basically saying like, I know you, and this is what, welcome to your new world. And then all of a sudden you find yourself just on a train, right? You don't know where you're going, but you get to the train station and you get off with everybody else. And it's like, you hear just this propaganda, just like this 1984 style, just like, we here, this is a great city you live in, and I am your city's leader. In fact, this city is one of the few great ones left in the world. Be very grateful you get to live in my city. And as you're walking through, it's just massive police state, like crazy amounts of soldiers everywhere, just like at any moment, just pointing at you. They do such a good job of making you feel like, they're singling me out, aren't they? They're looking at me. Oh no, I better blend in. Where's everyone else going? What do I do? Okay, go over here. Please don't mess with me. Please don't hurt me. I'm just a normal person trying to do normal person things. I don't know what this game's even about yet. Please. But you feel almost just like they're wearing these masks. You can't tell where they're looking. And they have these batons, these like kind of like charged baton things, and you can just tell by the way that they talk that they really love their job of beating up random people just to prove this is how you keep order in a city, right? And I have an important job to do. There's this one point where there's a soda can on top of a trash can, and as you're walking past him, he just knocks it off of the trash can right in front of you and stares at you. And it's a test. It's a test, right? It's like, I just did that, but are you going to submit, pick my trash up? And if you do, I'll let you go. If you don't, you're one of the bad guys because you don't submit to proper authority, right? So it's like, so you kind of have a choice to make. Okay, pick up the trash, put it away, and please don't hurt me. And the guy just lets you pass. And but you see like 100 of these guys, right? And then at some point, you kind of, they do pull you aside and they're just like, all right, you there, come here, right? You get interrogated. Turns out, it's, I can't remember his name. It's a guy. He's a friend.
Morgan?
He's undercover.
The main character? Freeman?
No,
Freeman?
the friend. There's a friend.
I said Morgan Freeman. It's not Morgan Freeman. His last name is Freeman, but I can't remember.
I can't remember. But there's a guy who is from a previous, I think probably from the first game. And you see him and it's like, he's here. And he takes off his mask. Hey, I'm here to help you out. Okay, man, here's like a freaking crowbar. I can't give you anything else. Good luck out there. But he kind of ushers us out through the back door. And then we just have to run basically the whole time. We find a way to climb up onto the roof, and then they figure it out. Oh no, he escaped. And then before you know it, within like 5 minutes of this game's intro, the entire power of the security state is looking for you. And you got a very good taste of how creepy and soulless and like just awful these people are, and how bad, yet on its surface ordered the city may appear, but the things they have to do to keep this city to be so ordered is just, it's horrible. And as you're meeting random people, they kind of can intuit what's going on, and they're all trying to help you, because none of them like what's happening here. And they're all just like, oh, here, psst, hey, come here. It's like, I don't even know who you are, but okay, I'm going with you. And then they're like, go around, you can go around them this way. And you see them just like doing, like they're knocking on people's doors, breaking the doors down, just like at random apartments, and you've got to try to find a way to get around them. But by the end, it just gets like way too much. It's like basically impossible. They finally corner you. So Alex shows up, and Alex is like, she basically just beats up all the guards for you right away. And she's just like, hey, here's the place you're going to go to. This is the coordinates. You kind of end up following her for a little ways, but you see the drones that are just kind of flying around. You see there's helicopters everywhere. There's like people are just shooting at you from the ground. It's like, this is hopeless. You are never going to escape this. And finally, you get into the one safe place in the whole freaking city, which is her dad, Alex's father, the scientist. He's like developed this new warp technology unit, right? And here, I'm going to test it out. But also, I rescued this, like, it's a like face sucker, like this weird little alien animal thing.
Which was
famous from the first game.
Yeah, they had a breakout,
Yeah, and he's like, don't worry, it won't hurt anybody. He's tame. I think he says that like they took off the sucker part of its face, so it's like can't hurt anyone anymore. But it's still walking around screwing things up. And so you watch this portal, you watch this machine basically teleport Alex out, and is like, see, it works. It's in perfect order. Everything's great. Now you step in. This is like the only way that you're going to survive this. Get in the thing and we'll teleport you out. You're not getting out on your own. And so you get in there, and as soon as you get in there, you see the little gremlin dude, the face sucker, just kind of crawling around, like chewing on the wires or something. And it's like, oh crap. And then all of a sudden some big thing breaks, and you see it kind of like, and it like falls down and runs away. And then it's broken tubes and wires. And the scientist is just like, oh crap. Like this thing's not going to work now. And the coolest part about it is that while you're in this transportation, this like teleportation chamber, it's kind of malfunctioning, but it doesn't break immediately. It just starts to change the coordinates. And before you teleport somewhere, you can kind of see it in front of you briefly, just a little bit. And then it kind of goes away, and then you see a new scene, and then it goes away. And so you kind of appear in front of that like leader, the grand leader of the city.
That's right.
And he's just like, well, how did you get in my office? And then you leave, right? Yeah. But you hear him say, that was Gordon. Yeah. I know that face. And then you appear in front of where you're trying to go, but Alex is like, don't touch him. He's got it. The thing has to finish. We can't take him out. It'll tear him apart. And then finally you end up teleporting just outside of that scientist's like office, and you just fall down. And he's just like, run. Like you've got to find a way you've got to figure this out, man. You've got to find a way. And that's one of the things I really like about Valve's games is that sense of like, here you are in a crazy place, like you got to figure it out. Like do your best to just figure it out. We can't help you anymore. Portal kind of feels like that a little bit. Like just figure out a way to make it through this very difficult situation. And that's where I'm going to leave it off. That's where I think the climax that's where the intro kind of reaches its climax, and then you've kind of got a pretty good idea of what to expect for the rest of the game. But it's wild. It really feels, you can just feel the oppression of the police state as you're going through it. And then the way that they pull off the teleportation scene, it's just chaotic, it's wild, it's thrilling. And even though it ultimately doesn't work, it was still like a really fun ride. Like it's just really cool. Yeah. It's a very, very good.
I have never been like much of a first-person shooter guy. Like it's just like not my genre.
Yeah.
But I have so much respect for Half-Life and Half-Life 2 in particular. Like the intro sequence is just like freaking incredible.
Very much so.
I like the game a lot. It's fantastic. All right, next one I wanted to talk about here was Nier Replicant. Nier Automata has a phenomenal intro as well.
It does, yeah, it does.
But I like Replicants just a little bit better. I feel like the mystery that is posed by Replicants opening was like, there was no way I was putting that game down after I saw that. I was like, holy crap, like what is going on? So the mystery was so intriguing that for me, like it takes the cake between the two of them. So it kind of starts off on this snowy, overcast day in a post-apocalyptic sort of like city, like a modern-looking city, right?
Depending on where you live, it'll either have the Eiffel Tower or
So depending on the region it was sold.
Yeah,
it had Big Ben
Empire
from
State
London,
Building,
the Empire State Building in New York. I don't know which tower it was in Tokyo.
I actually can't remember. That might have been Tokyo Tower. That might not have been. It might not have been the Eiffel Tower.
It was Tokyo Tower. And I do think they also have an Eiffel Tower one though.
Well, Tokyo Tower looks like the Eiffel Tower.
Oh,
so
does
honestly,
it? Okay. Actually, you might be right. Now I remember that. Anyways, depending on which region it was sold in, it had a different city in which this occurs in. So that's kind of cool. But my favorite thing about this is it's showing all these snowy environments, and you get some little like opening credits kind of interspliced into there.
Right.
And then it kind of goes to black, and it says 2053. So this is the future. And then, but order wise on the screen, right? It's revealing the right part first. We read left to right. So it has not revealed what's on which word is on the left first. It reveals the number on the right, 2053, and then it comes up summer.
Yeah.
So we have all this snowfall. Yeah. The kids are like wrapped up in coats and they're freezing, and it's summer. So already you're like, whoa, something crazy happened in the future, dude. Yeah. Like the whole world is like gone bonkers, and like even like the seasons don't make sense anymore. Like what happened here? Or you might even be thinking, wait, is that really snow that's falling? What is that?
You might be thinking
what is that? Yeah. Kind of a teaser for some other stuff from Nier. But
it's certainly snowy.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing mystery just right off the bat. Oh my gosh, what happened here? You're asking yourself, right? So you have this boy, or if you played the original North American version, older man who is kind of trying to protect his daughter or sister, depending if it's the brother version. In Japan, originally they had an older brother as the main character, and the North American or the Western release was a father. But in the latest re-release of the game, they just went with the brother character.
Yeah.
Anyway, his sister is sick. He's trying to protect her. Some monsters come in, and there's this book that he's like kicked away. He doesn't want to touch it. And he tells his sister specifically, do not touch that book no matter what. Goes off and tries to fight these monsters that are coming in. He can't fend them off. He ends up having to touch the book, and he gains some kind of power from it. Yeah. And this is what I was alluding to earlier when I said I love it when games give you a taste of like what it's like, a promise of what the combat or the gameplay is going to be like.
Oh, yeah.
You get a lot of end game level spells and abilities from touching this book. So you're sitting there as you're experimenting, learning the controls or whatnot, end game level spells and abilities, and you're just like, having like all the cool high level stuff. You're just like smashing everything, bam, bam. It's like, okay, wow, this is really cool. Like I could do this, I could do that. So you're kind of learning how to play the game.
I like that.
Getting a taste of it.
They tutorialize the game by giving you just tons of power and making it easy in that way. Instead of just the enemies are stupid and easy. It's like, no, you're freaking really powerful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Very brilliant way to tutorialize.
I like that. And you don't see it all the time, but like I like it as a concept. Where you're just like giving people, again, that promise, that taste of like what your character will become, like at the end, where you're just giving them that taste of that in a quick little opening sequence, just giving them just a second to where they're like all powerful, and then like you take it, strip it all away, and then make them kind of earn it, especially in an RPG where you're leveling up, right? So I really, really liked that. But that's not even like the craziest part. The craziest part is Yona, the sister, starts coughing, and she kind of falls unconscious, and it looks like maybe she's dying.
Yeah.
And our main character is like calling for help, like help, 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 help. And we pull out, we sort of like fade to white. We come back and it says 1,412 years later. And you have this same kid with the same sister who's sick with the same disease in the same predicament as far as that go in some like medieval village.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, what?
It's the future, but it's backwards.
How did we get here?
Yeah.
How are they still alive? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Like, when I saw that, like that 1,412 years later, and it's like the same people, I was like, okay, this is nuts. I don't know what's happening. Now I have to know what's happening. Like, I'm playing this freaking game.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the most effective intros in terms of like hooking me, in terms of like, I can't put this down now. I have to finish this now, that I've ever seen in a game. It was just like really, really, really well done. But I thought both of those, and they did it both on titles. So it was like Summer 2053. And then it was like more than 1,400 years later, the same freaking kids unchanged. Like, what is going on here?
Crazy.
So yeah, Nier Automata, or not Nier Automata, Nier Replicant has an amazing introductory sequence. Hits like all the stuff I was talking about that I look for in an intro sequence. So it's good stuff.
Then again, it's exciting at the beginning, and then it kind of calms down for a little bit for that town sequence until you get back into the church or where the place where she goes for the flower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, very well done.
Super good. What's the next one we got?
You got 3 in a row.
Suikoden 2.
Suikoden 2.
Dudes.
I just watched it. It's really good.
Suikoden 2 has one of the best intros of all time.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
So it's a tragedy that the composer for this game, her name is Miki Higashino, I think. Let me see. Didn't I write it down? Okay, yeah. So it's a tragedy that the composer for this game, Miki Higashino, she basically retired from game composing. I think, if not right after this, very, very soon after this. She might be the best game composer who has ever lived.
Really?
The music of Suikoden 2 in particular, but also Suikoden 1 and all the other games she worked on while she was there at Konami, are just like freaking amazing. She's an incredible composer and musician. And so you have like, there's a difference between the intro being like, you know, the opening movie that plays on the start screen. I usually don't count those as intros. But the music for that is so freaking good. Like, holy crap, dude. The way that it moves, like, it's just amazing. And so, you know, a lot of that is just kind of a, you know, sort of your typical anime intro where they're just giving you like shots of the characters and different situations and armies and just kind of giving you a feel for this is a war game with lots of characters you can recruit and that sort of thing. You know, here you have the runes and things like that that sort of like make the title sequence and whatnot. But go listen to the title music for Suikoden 2 right now if you've never listened to it before. It's freaking masterful. But the game proper begins with our main character, who you can name, but I think that in like a comic book or some sort of like outside material, they named him like Ryu. Ended up being like his name, but you can name him whatever you want, right? Your name, whatever. And then his best friend Joey. They are members of the Youth Brigade for the Highland Army, which is the country they're from Highland. And essentially, in the middle of the night, there's like a surprise attack because they're supposed to be a peace treaty that's going to be signed by the city-state and Highland. And in the middle of the night, there's this attack on this youth brigade, these children, right? Well, I don't know, teenagers. And so your captain comes running up to you, run. The only escape is here through the woods, like go that way. And so they're like taking off, like, okay. And you see, you know, fire and like people injured and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, Joey stops, or Joey, whatever you're supposed to pronounce it. It's like, you know, the only escape is through these woods because they're kind of up on like a cliff side, basically. The enemy would obviously know that. They're going to ambush us in those woods. We're going to be slaughtered in there. Let's go back and tell the captain. You go back and to tell the captain.
And knife in the heart.
The captain and the prince of Highland, Luca Blight, had set this up on purpose. This is a false flag operation. To blame the city-states for this massacre of the youth brigade, but really they're doing it to give Luca justification to go invade the city-state. And so you walk in on this, them admitting this, And it's like, well, they're going to kill you now. So now you're fleeing these soldiers who are pursuing you, and you get to the cliff
you have
side,
to go to the cliff. Yeah, you have to go up.
and there's nowhere to go. And it's like, well, we're going to have to jump. It's like, we'll never survive the current. Like, it's too strong. It's like, I'm going to make a mark right here. And you have these two best friends. They make this mark on the boulder. It's like meet back here. Cross. If you survive, come back and I'll meet you. Like, I promise. And they jump off. Right. And like that in and of itself is a super exciting opening. Yeah. Builds a lot of intrigue and mystery around this Luca Blight character, who's like the insane villain of this story. A lot of people think of like Kefka as like one of the greatest examples of like an insane sort of like villain. But Luca Blight, in a lot of ways, I think is even more interesting. We'll do Suikoden 2.
I would love to
podcast at
that
some point.
Game. That intro was very fun to watch.
It's so good,
very good, and the art style just phenomenal. Like that's how games are supposed to look. I loved it. It was so fun.
Yeah, Suikoden 2 is amazing. But it's even the part that comes after that. There's like this sepia toned sort of like memory sequence. With just this really somber, melancholic piano piece over the top of that, and the opening credits. And what you see here are memories of these two boys and Ryu's sister as well. There's kind of a trio there of friends as youngsters who grew up together and went through a lot. And that's one of the hardest things to establish in a story like this. Like a story like this, the crux, it emotionally totally relies on the fact that you believe in the bond between these childhood friends. It's like it all rests on that. All of its emotional power for its like payoffs later in the game rest on you feeling that connection between those characters. And they're obviously not going to take you back and let you see their entire childhood growing up. So what's the next best thing you can do? This sequence right here, it's very good. The tone the music sets and the moments they choose to show you just give you that sense in this really compressed space of how close they are, how much they mean to each other. You see the boys, playing games and laughing, and, the sister is there all the time. You see what looks like a grandfather figure sort of like maybe scolding, and they're kind of laughing at her, right? Because she got like told off by the parental figure. You have them sort of exploring the hills and the woods around their home together.
There's some like camera work too as well, that like some parallax.
The parallax shots that were cool. Awesome back then.
They were like Ghibli-esque, like they still look
beautiful landscapes, right? Yeah. And then you see Ryu and his sister burying someone. There's like a tombstone or a headstone in the backyard, and they're, sad. That parental figure we just saw obviously is the one that they're burying. Now they're alone. And then you see Joey and Ryu enlist into the military. They're training. They become soldiers, and they're sent off. They're like marching. They're like leaving the city, and the sister waving goodbye to them as they're heading towards this false flag operation to be massacred. And this all done in this style and just incredible music that just like really establishes that. And again, without having to say a word, without us having to like have been there per se for all of those events, we get the sense of it, and we see how important they are to each other. And it just immediately sets up exactly what it needs to pay off for the real emotional stuff later in the game. And so I'll leave it at that. We're going to cover Suikoden 2 eventually. I know there's a remaster coming out next year for both the first and second game.
Oh, nice.
So we'll probably put that on a poll to be covered around the time that it comes out. But
I played the first one.
Magnificent opening sequence. It's so good. Cool. Hooks you right away. I think the next one's Vagrant Story, right?
Yeah, it's Vagrant Story.
Man, Vagrant Story might be. It's hard to say any of these are the best or my favorite. They're so good in so many different ways. But as far as like technique goes, Vagrant Story like hits on so many things that to me just like make it technically very impressive, punchy. Again, it's an example of like brilliant writing and directing.
Yeah,
it's like the mysteries might not be like as crazy as something like Nier Replicant, where it's like, how did these kids survive and remain exactly the same for over 1,000 years?
The hook is like, less based on the mystery, and more based on like the setting.
The setting and just like the tone, technique, and like masterful direction.
Yeah.
Which is just all done really, really well in this punchy way, in a very exciting way. And like stylistically is just phenomenal. But a few things that really stood out to me with it is, so I wrote this line of dialogue down to give an example of why I think the dialogue in Vagrant Story is so good. So this is obviously a bad example from Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil.
Okay.
Where you have a character who turns to Jill, the main character of that game, and gives her a lockpick, so that you'll be able to get into access different places in the mansion, things like that. But what he says when he hands it over is, Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be better if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you. Like, right? Like, the reason why that makes you laugh is because nobody talks like that.
No.
The entire reason why a bad writer would include that little, you, the master of unlocking, take it with you, is because they want you, the audience, to know Jill she can pick locks.
Yes. Now,
she has that skill.
You can show that perfectly well without telling
the character saying in this very clumsy way,
yes,
you, the master of unlocking, take this lockpick with you.
I feel like the introduction to Cindy's character in Final Fantasy 15 it was similar where she said, hi, I'm Cindy, Sid's grease monkey daughter.
Yeah.
And it's like, I see you working on a car. You don't need to introduce yourself that way. No one does that. That's weird.
Perfect example as well. So you'll notice that a lot of times when a writer doesn't know, how can I make sure the audience understands this about the character? Well, I'll just have them say it this way.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not always an example of bad writing. I think sometimes it's okay and you can get away with it. There are some times when you can't do anything else but that. So I'm not saying it's like a hard rule or something like that, but generally you want to avoid that because it's just not very convincing dialogue. So the way that they introduce mysteries without ever resorting to that sort of thing in Vagrant Story's intro and try to communicate like all of these crazy terms and places and people, it could be very confusing. Like if a very masterful writer was not the one penning the script.
Yeah.
I just want to say all of that to say Yasumi Matsuno is a fantastic writer and director, right? Nice. So I wrote here, one of my favorite aspects of Vagrant Story's dialogue is the natural flow of conversation without the as you know dialogue for the audience's sake. For example, right at the beginning, you have Rosencrantz like stabbing this dude, right? And he just kind of, and another soldier comes in and he turns to the soldier, says, have you found Sydney? That's it. He doesn't have to say, have you found Sydney, the fanatical cult leader who's burning down the manor? You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have to like,
you know,
we're going to learn who Sydney is throughout the course of this, but we don't have to give a line of dialogue that would be clumsy in order to like, just for the sake of the audience.
Yeah.
So here are the questions that this sequence creates. You know, who is Sydney? Who are they after? Why is this manor burning down? Like, why are they trying to kidnap the Duke's son? Where is Leamont? Why are they taking him there? Why is Sydney able to survive like an arrow through the heart and just like get up and like leave that place?
Oh yeah, that was
right.
Crazy.
Like, and they introduce each one of these mysteries in this really, really cool way in terms of technique. So they use their slams to black for their opening credits sequence, almost in every instance, right as you're asking yourself an intriguing, mysterious question.
Yeah. So it's like, wait, please elaborate. Nope.
Boom. We cut to black and we're cutting somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's like the director is teasing the audience. Almost like, you know, those ice cream vendors where they like hand the cone out and the kid like takes it and then he just takes they get the cone without the ice cream. And it's like, oh, and there's like, oh, here you go. And then they do it again. And they do it again. That's like basically what the opening of this game is. So you have Rosencrantz asking, where are you, Sydney? As he like looks menacingly out the window of the manor and it's like fire everywhere. Cut to black. Now we're going to get introduced to Ashley, right? The risk breaker who's coming and he's being chased. He's not a part of these soldiers, but he's also after Sydney. Who is he? What's he doing there? Right? Like we're just getting to know him a little bit. We get these slams to black, like right as you're about to like have an answer to that or maybe advance where that story is going. He makes his way into the manor. He overhears Sydney, who they don't show you right away. I love that.
Yeah.
So like we've been, who is Sydney? Why are they after Sydney? And then you hear Sydney's voice, you're reading it, but you hear Sydney's voice in the next room, and they're showing Ashley's face as he's listening to this conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
And I love how it's like, I can't remember the name of the character who's with Sydney. He's like lackey dude. Anyway, doesn't matter. He says Sydney's name, and when they do that, the camera pushes in on Ashley's face. He's like, oh, there he is. There's Sydney. Yeah. Right? So like the way he's using the camera, the way he's using like the cinematography, the blocking, the direction, when he reveals certain things, it's just like pulling you in, pulling you in, pulling you in, pulling you in. And then you have this whole confrontation between Ashley and Sydney. And he calls him a risk breaker. Okay, what's that? You know, like he's a separate faction from like the other soldiers who are here. And he's got his bow gun, crossbow pointed at his heart, right? And he leaps after him anyways. He shoots him like right through the heart. He just falls down dead. And so he's not paying attention to him anymore,
right? And
then all of a sudden, he's back up behind him, like attacking him again. They're taking away the boy. So it's just a very exciting sequence, and then it culminates with this dragon like coming through the glass, which gives Sydney time to escape. You have to deal with that dragon.
Yeah,
and
the dragon.
And I love, again, the music crescendo as he walks up kind of these like steps that lead to the paned glass that Sydney had jumped out of to escape. And he's just looking as like, because this manor had been burned in the early hours of the morning, so it was dark when he got here. But now the sun is peaking, it's cresting, the sunrise is coming over, and the music is just building up to this moment. And he's just like, Leamond, like, what is this city they were talking about? And then it just crescendos on the reveal of the title, Vagrant Story. And I'm just like, dude, I'm hooked. I got to find out who Sydney is, what's Leamond, what's going on here, what's the secret power, how's the Duke involved in all of this? Like, there's all this like political stuff going on. There's a few other scenes you can miss if you like skip through the title screen, where you got like Parliament all involved and like government organizations, and there's all this corruption, and it's just like, dude, this is so cool. Like the style is so awesome, very comic book like. So Vagrant Story, again, an example of where like the mystery might not be like as totally like out there as something like Nier, but like its execution and direction is so good that like you're just roped in slowly. It's great.
It's almost like the hook is there's a beastly director making this game.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what the hook is. And what's really fun is that I could see some people, maybe a producer or somebody, who upon reviewing the game would be like, hey, there's a lot of political intrigue, there's a lot of complexity to your story. Maybe you should explain more. Yes. Right? But
nope.
Now, and I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying I could see, and maybe even people playing it will be like, could somebody please explain to me what's going on here?
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point of this isn't to explain. Some people make a mistake here. They think the setting is to explain what's happening. No. Your setting is your hook, and you're going to draw people into what they will find out. They're going to find out what's happening later. Yes. You don't have to lay it all out here. What you need to do is lay out enough so that they want to continue.
They want to know more.
And this game does it so well, so perfectly too, where it's like, I don't think there's wasted dialogue here, right? Like because it's pretty short. Yeah, like once you go through the whole thing. And it's like, wow, there's such complexity here. And they really aren't touching on it. They're just introducing it. And then we're going to uncover the factions and all the political stuff. We're going to uncover that throughout the game.
Yeah.
So much fun.
It's a director and a writer who is not afraid, who is confidently saying, I know that you want to know more about this. I'm not explaining it to you yet.
Right.
I'm giving you a taste, but I'm totally not. I am leaving this. I'm dangling this carrot in front of you, and I'm not going to over-explain it.
And then we're happy to follow along.
Yeah. And again, just very punctual, like short intros that get you playing the game quickly. Like I can't tell you how many times I've played a game where I felt like, dude, I've been playing this for an hour or longer. Like, oh my goodness, can I play the game yet?
Yeah, get
all of these do such a magnificent job of getting you playing really fast. So Vagrant Story is great.
All right, we come now to
our final.
The final of our top 10 intros.
It's almost like this is the alpha and omega of games.
What do you think it's going to be? What do you think, people?
Oh, goodness. Xenogears, man.
So Xenogears has a killer intro.
It's so good.
Just killer. And
so
once again, it's concise. It's short. All the good things you can say about Vagrant Story's intro, you can say about Xenogears, aside from the fact that the initial Xenogears intro is not heavy on gameplay, but it is short enough to where it's like, okay, that's fine. You watch the intro, and then once you start playing the game, it's even more intriguing because it's like, this isn't the setting that I was expecting when I saw this futuristic spaceship show up at the very beginning of the game. Like, why are we here now? Like, so it adds that kind of intrigue to it, where it's like, wait, technology just jumped way backwards.
The mystery
I'm curious.
itself is so, you're just so like discombobulated mentally.
Yeah.
Like, what am I watching? What just happened? What the fetch? There's so much symbolism involved. There's so many references to like biblical references, Gnostic references, like Jewish mysticism. And it's all in there, even if you don't know it, because there's terminology that you're probably just like, what? Like, it's all flying over my head. But that's intentional.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to be able to just like really understand what's happening here until you have played that game and probably played it again. And then come back a third time, and you're really looking at it line by line, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, they set up literally everything here. It's all there, man. They planned the whole thing.
It was absolutely brilliant.
None of this technobabble is just technobabble.
Right.
It all is very purposeful. It all has strong reference and foreshadowing and like a payoff later.
Yeah.
And it's also just a very exciting sequence. It is.
Because at first it's like, what's happening, right? So you get your general intro of, okay, everything's going fine. And then suddenly something's going wrong. Like, oh no, the system's breaking. Why is it breaking? I don't know. There's this thing that just showed up. Wait, is it the thing from the thing? Like, they use so many words in Xenogears.
You might as well have said that, because the real terminology would mean just as much as a thing of the thing. What thing? That thing's coming after us. Oh, the thing.
Oh no, the thing. You mean the thing we're carrying? Yes, the thing we're carrying. Something's gone wrong with the thing, you know. And it's really fun because as it begins to take over, they're just like, oh, at first, you feel the tension build. At first, it's like, oh, okay, just run a reroute, block them at this point, and then reinstitute the firewall or whatever. Like, just we'll get our systems back. It's not a big deal. And then it's like, that didn't work. Do you have anything else? Okay, well, I guess let's take this a little more seriously. Do this, and this. And like, okay, that didn't work either. And it's getting even further. Like, oh, crap. Wait, we'll call engineering or whatever. And then the most haunting shot of at least the intro here is the point where he gets on the phone and he's like, all right, give me the bay. What's going on down there? And you just see the phone dangling with like the wires, like, and it's like, this thing has already made the jump from E-space to like the real physical parts of the ship now. And it's causing serious problems. And then the captain's just like, oh.
Well, because then like the whole screen is just filled with
everything turns
ye
red.
Shall become as gods.
Ye shall
like the
become
whole
as
thing
gods.
has been hacked. It's like he has no control anymore.
Yeah,
it's they've totally lost.
And then he's just like, because he knows more or less what's going on, and just like, okay, everybody get out of here. And he stays, right? He kind of touches the picture of his wife. He knows that like, I'm not long.
Yeah, and then the part that even
was that his daughter?
I think it's his wife and his daughter.
Okay, that's right.
But like, all the escape pods are shooting out, and they're getting shot down by the ship.
That was
systems,
crazy.
Like defense systems, they're just killing all the freaking escape pods.
It's like everything here is being destroyed on such a massive scale. What can possibly, like, how can anyone survive this, right? And then you see that last shot from the planet, right, looking up as it's like just like being exploded.
He self-destructs the ship, and it falls into the gravity of the nearby planet and crash lands.
Yeah,
and then there's a single survivor.
From the wreckage, there is a survivor,
standing out, looking over the ocean.
As the sun is rising.
Yes. The dawn of a new species on a new planet.
It's so much fun. And then what? How 10,000 years later or something?
Something close. Yeah, sure. I think it is
way
exactly
later.
9,999 or something like that years later.
And then it's like, and here we are. And it's Fei Fong Wang, and he's got his own little drama with his friend and this girl, and oh no, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And it's like, I really like it a lot, but it is very jarring to have that type of an intro and then come into this to have an intro that doesn't introduce your main character.
Yes.
But the point of this intro is not to introduce, like with Vagrant Story, it's like, hey, we're going to introduce you to the characters here. The point of the point of Xenogears intro is to introduce you to the concepts.
Yes.
And to the, I don't want to say philosophies, but to the setting, the history, right? That's what they're introducing you to. It's not necessarily the characters themselves. You're going to have to get to know them later. But it's a perfect setting for this world.
Yes.
And it's one that, as you're playing the game, just constantly keep that in mind. What happened during that Elbridge disaster, right? Like, why is that even important to show at all at the beginning of this game? Very exciting, very fun. And that presents a very big mystery for you to then work to solve now and to figure out, why are things like this now when it used to be like that?
Yes.
What happened?
And as you revisit this scene, the first time you'll just be totally confused.
Yes, which is why we're not really going into detail.
This is like totally crazy.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. Yeah. It's not like you can't follow it for what you need to understand.
Something went wrong. And
something went wrong.
Everyone died.
Something took control of the systems. Everyone died. There's one survivor.
That's the gist.
That's essentially all you need to know.
Yeah.
But like, you go back and revisit it after playing the game, and you realize all of the stuff they're saying and how that all relates to super, super relevant, not just to the plot, but to the game's core themes and message and like what it's really building up to saying. It's all in there. Yeah. And like the act of like decoding all of that becomes like such a fun exercise.
It really is.
That just even further deepens how much you appreciate this game, how much you appreciate the thought that went into it. It's phenomenal. So everything there, all this babble that you don't understand if you're playing for the first time, trust me, that's there for a reason. They thought of the reason. They're setting something up. They're going to pay it off.
Right.
You can come back and understand it on a second play. And that's what makes Xenogears, I don't know, so timeless in a way, is that you can keep revisiting it and you're going to like see another one of those things. It's like, how much did they jam into this that I didn't know?
It's a big commitment, but I really want to revisit that game.
We will.
Sooner the better.
We will do Xenogears Season 2. I don't know when, but we'll do it sometime.
One day.
Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.
Yep.
That's our 10. Well, I don't know if it's the best, but it's 10 of the best.
10. There you go. 10 of the best. How about that?
Gaming intros of all time. If you guys
minus Final Fantasy.
If you guys have some, that's true, excluding Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
If you guys have some that, again, I feel like there's this one swimming somewhere up here that I just can't seem to like grasp onto that I felt like I was missing. Somebody hit the comments. Tell me what it is. What did I miss? What should we have said that we didn't say? Anyways, look forward to Metal Gear Solid 2 because it's coming next week, guys. Hope you enjoy that. We're looking forward to it. Till then, peace out.